Thank you so much for all of you who have decided to join us. We're hopeful that more people will show up. I know that the sessions are running a little bit late, so we'll welcome whoever comes back. But to all of you, we'll respect your time, and so we will get started. So just to kind of open and I'll introduce each of the panelists. My name is Carlos Gerena. I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships at Reach Digital Health. We are a nonprofit organization that focuses on leveraging digital technology, simple digital technology, I must add, like SMS, WhatsApp, USSD, to engage individuals. This could be a pregnant woman, an HIV positive man, anyone trying to look for information across these channels through a behavioral inform a piece. That's what we do. And so today, as you see, our panel is named Voice as the Next Frontier for Inclusive Conversational AI in Law and Resource Contexts. And I think we were very intentional on how we use this title. In terms of frontier, we're not saying this is the next solution. We're not saying this is the next silver bullet, but something that it's worth speaking. There's a lot of context around it, and so that's what we're going to be addressing today. By show of hands, how many of you have attended an AI session while at ICT4D? Like AI, there was AI in it. Yeah, like a lot of AI sessions are happening at the same time. So it is, we were chatting with a few folks and friends. We're saying like, you know, AI is a bit similar like 15, 20 years ago when ICT4D for development started to go. Like everybody wanted it, very few understood it. And so today we're going to speak a little bit about some of the frontiers that are still yet to be explored with some of great panelists that we have here. And, you know, when we speak about voice specifically on AI as the next frontier, I always like to give my grandmother example. She is a almost 90-year-old woman from Mexico that every morning sends me a messages through WhatsApp. But I can see how her evolution has also basically evolved from text. Then she discovered, you know, stickers and GIFs. So it was easier for her to just do stickers and GIFs. And now she discovered voice. So she only sends voice notes. And she also asked me kindly to also just send her voice notes because she now, you know, her eyesight and all of that, she's struggling. So voice has really become a way for her to communicate in a channel that she's familiar, but it's not about literacy, it's just about comfort. So voice brings a lot of those components. But when we think about AI and voice, I think there's all the nuances that one needs to think about when building and addressing these users. So I will just let each of our panelists to introduce themselves. And if you can just, you know, introduce your organization, what you do, and let's start already with the question. What is the one thing that the different panels, the global AI conversation, fundamentally is misunderstanding about voice and inclusion in this African context? And Celine, maybe we start with you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Céline Duros. I'm Senior Director for Viamo, which is a mobile engagement and mobile engagement platform and a voice-first solution. We, social enterprise, were actually created 15 years ago. We operate in more than 35 markets. A lot of the work is done in Sub-Saharan Africa, but also in Asia. Some of the AI solution, I just want to put a bit of context, but we have one of our flagship product is called the Viamo platform. So it's partnership with telcos that makes this possible. And essentially, it's like a Google for people who are not connected. So if you're looking for an information, whether it's the news, the weather, maternal health content, some advertising, our users, it's about 30 million users across the continent, if I focus on Sub-Saharan Africa, are calling the platform to actually get information. And some of the latest AI solution that we plug to that existing platform is Ask Viamo Anything, where essentially see it as like a Siri or a Google Assistant or a ChatGPT voice, where they're going to be able to ask questions. We're sector agnostic. So we work with quite a number of development partners. So I think one of the fundamental, thing that the AI conversation misunderstand about the inclusion is that it's not because there's a tool that people are going to use it. It's much more complex than this. It requires, especially if we focus on Africa, like the context is very different. That's why we surround ourselves with experts to make sure that we get the context expertise that is linked to the technology that we bring. And, you know, literacy, language, digital confidence, gender dynamics, relevance, all of this needs to be taken into account. And that's what we take into account when we design and when we implement. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Olamide Shubamo. I'm Data Science Nigeria. So, Data Science Nigeria is a data science and artificial intelligence based organization. We are focused on raising African talent. So our mission is to raise 1 million African talents that can in turn influence the life of 2 billion African people. And one of the ways we are doing this is we have a startup, which is one of the solutions from Data Science Nigeria to carry out this goal. So the startup is Equalize AI, and I'll be representing Equalize AI majorly on this panel. What we do at Equalize AI is we try to make artificial intelligence opportunity accessible and equal for all Africans. And the way we do this is we collect hyperlocal data sets. We use this data set to train models that can interact in African context, understand the African people. And for us to serve this model to African people, we need to build solutions that they can interact with. And this is what led us to building solutions for Africans, by Africans, basically. So I'll go straight to a fundamental misconception, like Carlos has said. So I think from the example you give about WhatsApp voice note and being convenient. So if you look at WhatsApp, you realize that WhatsApp voice note is basically a feature on WhatsApp. The text is still the main interaction interface. The voice is the feature. So that is still like a misconception in the voice space. So we treat voice as a feature, nice to have. If it is not there, it is okay. But the reality is that we need to move to a place where we realize that voice is actually the most natural way that human has been interacting for a very long time, and it is still going to be the most natural way. With a single speech, I can understand the intent, I can understand emotion, I can understand sentiment, I can understand your condition just by a single speech. And it's authentic and it is instant. I want to come to inclusion and the misconception around inclusion. So inclusion is basically treated as an extension of what is existing to cover a new kind of system. When we speak about inclusion, we try to say, oh, this system works here, let's just bring it here, but that is not inclusion. That's like impersonation and impositioning, basically. We are trying to cover up a particular situation or circumstance just by covering it. I'd like to give an example of that so that we can understand the way I understand it. So, say I want to shave somebody's hair. I need the person to be present for me to shave their hair. I cannot say I have shaved their hair by covering it in a scarf, because the hair is no longer visible when I cover it in a scarf does not mean I have shaved it. That is the way inclusion is being perceived. Because when you cover it in a scarf, it looks like there is no hair there. But actually shaving the person's hair is what inclusion is. We make sure that the way we treat voice AI, it's trained with African language by the African people for the African context. So that is basically my point.
Please.
Okay. Hi, so I'm Linda Raftree, and I work at the Merle Tech Initiative, and we really sit at the intersection of monitoring, evaluation, research and learning, and technology. We look at it from both sides. So first is how do you use these emerging technology tools to conduct data collection, research, et cetera, and then how do you conduct monitoring and evaluation on programs and initiatives that have AI or other types of technology components. And so I'm going to step back a little bit, because when we think about these tools, one of the misconceptions or the challenges, I think, in what's been happening, and we know all this if we've been in ICT or in mobile for development for years and years, that whenever something new comes out, we really treat it in isolation and we really focus on the thing. And so I think one of the challenges that we're seeing, actually two challenges. I think one is kind of putting too much attention on the AI and not thinking about the infrastructure that we need. So you can really speed up data collection, or you can really encourage people to get healthcare. But if you don't have a clinic, then what are you going to do? So I think speeding up a lot of processes through AI is possible, but there's still a pace that happens in people's lives and human lives and human communities that you can't always speed up. And so I think that's something that we don't have quite right in our framing. And I think the second piece that I want to mention is I think we're sometimes following this kind of Silicon Valley trajectory of seeing AI as this kind of personal agency tool. And that if I just have an AI companion, then if I'm being discriminated against in my job, it's okay because I can talk to my AI companion. Or it's kind of like offloading all of the structural fixes that we know need to happen and kind of putting them into this device. And I'm wondering if that's drawing us back from community organizing, community engagement, and really working out our problems with other people. And it's kind of isolating us a little bit more. So I think that's a problem also in how we might be framing it if we're taking that very kind of commercial or kind of Silicon Valley approach to AI that is kind of creeping back into the development sector.
Great, and thank you so much, everyone. But we'll stay with you, Linda, because I think we want to take a step back, and we're definitely going to speak about voice and the opportunities around it. But let's talk a little bit about AI. That's sort of like everybody's riding the wave at the moment. Few understand it. And so, Linda, from your perspective, we've all often have heard that AI will, to a certain extent, democratize access, right? But from your perspective, have you seen that it's actually doing the opposite? So reproducing potential exclusion or even inequality. And what happens when some of these assumptions are ignored and we just go and deploy without really understanding, power dynamics, literacy, gender dynamics, all of these things? If you could speak around that, that would be great as well.
I mean, I think at best you have a tool or product that no one uses because they don't know it exists. It wasn't designed for them. It's not speaking their language. It's first, you think someone's going to pick it up just because you designed it. I mean, we've heard this so many times in the space, like build it and they will come. So we're doing now with AI. We're building stuff that maybe doesn't have a budget to let people know that it exists, or maybe we're building things that we think are really great, but we don't really know if the people we think are going to use it think that it's really great or even want it or need it. We don't know if they have a phone that can handle it. We don't know if they have electricity. We don't know. We've spoken so much about this over the years, anyone who's kind of worked in this space, and it's kind of like, why are we forgetting this again? So one of the things that we've been really insisting on is kind of returning back to this idea of doing our research, doing our formative research, doing our digital design research, spending time with the people that that are going to be using the tools and products, and making sure that the design we're doing is the right design. And I'm thinking back to the days when I learned about social and behavior change communication, and we were designing comics for people, and we would say, well, you can't use that pattern, that skirt pattern in Ghana because that's Nigerian. And if you bring a Nigerian pattern of clothing in your drawing to Ghana, the Ghanaians are going to know that this isn't for them, it's for Nigeria. And so very, very minute, things that if you're sitting from the outside, you might not think it matters. And so I think the same with voice, the same with someone's accent, with the way someone speaks, with the way someone engages. I think all these things, we really need to think about them when we're working with voice technology, and make sure that we're doing all that early research and that we're consistently doing our monitoring over time and checking in with communities about how these tools are working for them.
Thank you so much for that. It reminded me of the one point one of the initial panelists of the opening ceremony made of 3 women of color being kind of scanned by this AI thing to create kind of like a cartoon version of them, and the 3 of them were the same, and they were actually using Nigerian attire where they were coming from different places. So these nuances do matter, maybe not from the model or from whoever is doing the research, but to the people on the ground, they are critical. Moving on, and I want to come to you, Celine, as well, because I think Viamo has really spent many, many years understanding the way to engage with users. And I think before voice AI became a thing, you guys were already stretching the sort of boundaries of like what voice can do and how people feel comfortable engaging via voice, right? So what would it be, some recommendations or things that you can speak about that the development world sort of miss or needs to understand when we think about voice AI as well?
Generative and AI, yes. I think I'm going to echo what Linda was saying to some extent. Like the access doesn't mean that people are going to use it. And for instance, if you look at one of the GSMA report from 2025, it was actually showing that 3.4 billion people were offline. And when you look at accessibility in terms of towers and internet, most of the region where there is access. So that's one thing like that is just a reality. It's not because you have access to the internet that you're going to be able to use it. And our experience here, it's true, it's 15 years of experience. And we saw that voice was outperforming USSD, was outperforming SMS. We used to have the Viamo platform, SMS and voice. It was 96% usage through voice and 4% through USSD. We just decided to just stop text-based because based on the population that we target, which is bottom of the pyramid, that is struggling with electricity, that has those YAM phone, those basic phone, and that is also much more comfortable with voice because, to your point, Anibade, that's how people learn. That's how you learn, and that's how you share your tradition. And so voice is there. And our users, they tend to use TV and radio. So having on your phone, we meet them where they are, on their phone, in local languages, and in voice content. So that's really some of the key learning that we got over the years.
You touch on something specific, which is languages, right? So voice is a thing, but the different languages. And in places in South Africa, there's 11 official languages. In Mexico, there's a Spanish, but there's almost 100 and something dialects that people use. And so I want to come to you, Olamide, because you guys have been thinking a lot about this in data science Nigeria. And there's enormous excitement around large language models and generative AI. But specifically, when it comes to languages, what does the future look for those languages that are underdeveloped or poorly represented and maybe not even digitized? If you can speak a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, the future for underrepresented languages, on digitized languages, I would say the future is possible in terms of inclusion in AI. The future is very possible. I say this not as a wishful thought, but actually as somebody that is currently doing the work in the AI space. We have the resources to make it possible. We have the blueprint, there is the bridge there. People have done it before. We can cross the bridge and get there. It has been open sourced to us, basically. But yes, we cannot undermine the risk that is there. In Africa alone, we have over 2,000 languages, and most of them, they are underrepresented. They are not represented. The languages that we have, they are so different from the dominant languages in terms of tonal system, in terms of context, in terms of cultural representation. And these languages, these models that exist already, they are not represented in the languages that are in the dominant models. I'm trying to speak, and when I say dominant models, I'm trying to talk about the foundational LLMs like on OpenAI, although they claim to be multilingual, to have multiple languages trained on them. But the languages that we have in Africa, I said earlier, like 2,000 languages, they are poorly represented in this model. Some of them are completely absent from the training sets. And we cannot say that a model understands African language or a model can serve African if that model has not truly had Africa. And that is the reason why we started Equalize AI, to make sure that we have the true representation of African voices in artificial intelligence. We collect hyperlocal data. ethically sourced by going to communities, engaging people that truly speak the language, and ask them for their consent, collect the data, collect their voice, then go back to the lab, train models with this data, and build solutions. And this, I am saying, can be validated by one of our works. One of our collaborative work recently got the award of the best paper at the African NLP workshop at ACL 2026. The paper is African Voices Nigeria, where where we collected over 2,500 hours of ethically sourced speech data set for Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba, and Pidgin English. So I say that the future is possible. It is possible that African engineers and researchers are intentional about building models that truly serve their communities. And we are ready to build infrastructures that can sustain that system. Thank you.
Because there is a true risk that at a point, only those who are represented are the ones that are moving forward, and those who are not get left behind. So work like the one that you're doing is it's clearly important. And I like the fact that you mentioned ethical collected, because mining of this data, it's also another risk that we've seen in the space. So changing gears a little bit in terms of this sort of communication modality, let's talk a little bit more about voice, trust, gender, and human behavior. Linda, you touched a little bit about SBCC. One of the things that we do at Reach Digital Health is literally engaging and building trust with the users that we have, because ultimately we want them to trust the information that we send them. We want them to action around the information that we send them. And so that specific process goes beyond any technology. It's really understanding who we're talking to, what do we want them to understand, and how we communicate with them. So from that perspective, Linda, and in your experience, what are these gender implications when it comes to voice? Like, one would think that gender does play a role in many other contexts, but it also has a role to play when it comes to voice. And if you could speak a little bit about the risks that we could face if we don't pay enough attention to it.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a circular issue, because if we don't have voice data from women, we might not be able to interpret it into text and voice. So if we're only training voice data on male voices, it might not capture or be as accurate for women. And in some studies that I've been reading, it's not the same in every case. It's not that in every case men's voices are more recognized than women's voices. It varies by language. It varies by part of the country. It varies by socioeconomic status. And so, if you have populations that may be less literate, they may speak in a slightly different way. And then, maybe that's less understood. Or if you're talking about a patient-doctor relationship, it might be that the doctor's voice is understood better than the patient who might be lower economic status. And so I think really thinking about those different types of inclusion and those multiple layers of inclusion. And then if you don't have AI that understands women because the data is not trained on women's voices, then the women aren't going to use the AI, and then you're not going to get women's voices, and then it becomes this kind of circular exclusion. And then the flip side of that is the question that you've already touched around, is kind of like surveillance and consent. And I don't think people in general often know that their data or their voice is being used to train models. And so I love that you addressed on the ethical ways of collecting voice data, because I think that's really important. I think it's really hard to explain to people what's happening and what the risks are if you're collecting their voice. And I think people's voices are being collected all the time, unbeknownst to us. And so I think that's a challenge. And then I think there's also something around being very careful that we're not replicating gender bias, because a lot of the way that language is structured can be structured with gender bias within the language. And you know this from Spanish, for example, words have gender. You can say them, and it's the male and not male and female in the plural of them. And so certain words are gendered like that, and certain languages are gendered. And so I think also, if we're not careful in the way that we train whether it's text or voice, if we're not training our models and then being aware to go back and think through the gender biases that are encoded in language, that are encoded in language structure, then again, you can be replicating certain types of bias in the way that your AI is behaving. So those are some of the things that I wanted to raise. Yeah.
Thanks, Linda. And it's so big, right? The spectrum of voice. So to your point around Spanish, the one day I was complaining to my wife about the cockroach, and I said the cockroach, no, and she did this and that, and she was like, "Wait, why is the cockroach female? Why don't you make it male?" And I was like, "Well, no, because in Spanish it's female, so like all of these things do play a role in how we bias or not, or we account for gender." Celine, I want to come to you because I feel like in the space, there's a lot of organizations that claim or they say, well, we use a human-centered design type of approach or a user-first type of approach, but few actually do understand and know what it is. And I believe that Viamo, with the work that you guys have been doing, really understand that. And so if you can speak a little bit about how does good audience research look like in practice, I think that would be very helpful for us as well.
Thank you, Carlos. Yeah, we do take human-centered design like very seriously, and it's not just before we do the setup. It's like continuous. In some of the work that we've been doing with Ask VM or anything, one of the main challenge at the beginning was people had the technology, they were shown how to use it, but asking the first question was difficult. Imagine, do you guys remember the first time you wrote your first prompt? Like, it was probably a bad one, right? So that's actually what we see today is they don't know, and we end up having a lot of research around, should that be a BIP? Should that be press one? Should we give them ideas of questions so that can actually help them? Should we help them about choosing a topic that they want to start with? So that's actually has been, and it's continuous. It's not has been, it's continuous as of today. So and that has been really driving adoption. What we've seen is the repeat usage is the result of making sure that we analyze those behavior and that we track what is driving the best questions and how we see repeat usage.
Excuse me, I love the continuous component of it because it's like health, right? Like health is not static. You are not pregnant forever, and my wife will be like, thank goodness. And your experience, your requirements evolve with you as well within that sort of journey. So it's the same, as a user, your requirements will, like my grandmother, she used to text, then images, now voice. So it's important that we walk with them that sort of journey and continue to do that research.
One of the key aspects to build trust, building trust and making sure that they trust the technology is the key one. So I was saying that in the previous panel, but some of the questions that we've seen from our users is the most basic question that they already know the answer. Like, what's the capital of my country? And then once they do 1, 2, 3 questions, it's like, okay, cool, I can actually trust it. So then that's when they start to go in so many different topics, and that we see the questions coming. The question is one thing, but what we want to transform the behaviors. That's really what we care about. And some of the work that we we are doing in Pakistan with our HPV line. So basically, it's just available for parents to call and understand what does that mean? Why should my child be actually vaccinated? We've seen that it's early result, but it's going to be disclosed in a couple of months with like the final result, that we actually reach the same type of level of interaction as if it was a human helpline. And that's that continuous refinement and making sure that every time that we saw something that was not working, we were actually going back to that human-centered design to go and fix it.
Thank you so much, Celine. Olamide, I'll go with you as well now, because from your technical perspective, I think that there's been a lot of breakthroughs in the last 2 years, right, when it comes to AI, specifically around voice. But what are the breakthroughs that you see or you have seen that are now making these voice systems more viable than, again, 1 year ago? I mean, the technology is moving so fast. And what are the things that you have seen from your perspective, more technically speaking?
From a technical perspective, yes, I can say that what we are able to do 2 years ago has improved drastically to what we can do now. And this is driven by several emergence in technology. We can also confirm that there has been a lot of evolvement over the past few years. I'm going to mention two things. The first one is what large language models can do 2 years ago has significantly improved to what large language models can do now. Um, More particularly around the latency of response. Um, Currently, I think yesterday, at the Google I/O conference, it was reported that you can now generate token as up to 15,000 token per second. That means that you can get intelligence like 15,000 times per second. And this is what that has a ripple effect on voice intelligence. Because as of 2 years ago, when you prompt a model, it takes few seconds to give you a response. But today, when you prompt a model, immediately it's giving you a response. So that has enabled us to say, oh, I can get intelligence in milliseconds, then I can turn it to voice in milliseconds, then it looks like a conversation. So this has put voice intelligence to the front. I don't have to ask the voice. I don't have to ask via my voice, then wait for about 5 seconds, then get response. It is mundane. But today you can ask, and even the model will interrupt you, or the model will notice when you are interrupted. When you go silent, it notices your punctuations, your full stop, your comma, because it can process your input faster than it can process 2 years ago. And the second thing I'm going to mention is, as of 2 years ago, for us to achieve voice intelligence, that's voice AI, conversational voice AI, we have to put several layers of algorithms together. We have to put speech to text, natural language understanding, natural language processing, text to speech, noise cancellation, intent detection, voice recognition, a lot of layers. We have to put them together. But today we have pipelines that have been improved into simple single algorithms that just with one model, you can do end-to-end conversation without having to put layers on top of layers on top of layers on top of layers. There is personal duplex by NVIDIA that does this just one single model, talk to it, it responds back, it understands what you are saying. And this has really put voice in front. There is no latency, there is no lagging, there is no missing information. One single model, instant intelligence and response that actually fits your use case. So this is a significant change that we have noticed that has brought voice to the frontier.
Even accent. Now you can have Nigerian English accent, South African English accent, maybe Mexican English accent as well. So all of these things do play a role.
Improved training data, yeah. The training data is improved. So that is why we have accents included. Because the data they have 2 years ago is not the same data they have now. So the training data has improved. So there's inclusion in the data. So we can now say you can speak in Nigerian accent and the model respond back to you in Nigerian accent. Yeah.
Amazing. So we're just going to do one more round, and we want to hear from you as well, questions that you may have. This is a little bit of, let's call it harder question segment, more controversial around AI, but let's see. And then it's just to get you guys inspired to ask some questions as well. We're ready for your hard questions as well. And I'll start with you, Linda, again, because, I mean, we're speaking about AI practices, best practices, human-centered design, and the sorts. But what is one practice that are currently happening when it comes to AI that you're like, that one should stop, like stop it right now? Which one is that?
I think we're starting to confuse inclusion. I think inclusion for me is a very passive thing. So it's like we're including you and you're now in our data set, you've been included. And I find that really problematic because it's a kind of passive inclusion in something that maybe you didn't even want to be included in the first place. And so I feel like I would like to see us move to a framing of inclusion that's more active, that's more consent-based, more decision-making based, more actually like real inclusion in making decisions around the kinds of tools that people are interested in having or the ways their data is used. And so I feel like we're running this risk of thinking, oh, we included people, that was good enough. And so I would like us to push further.
Becomes like a ticking box exercise, just like, oh, you're included? Great. Celine, Viamo works a lot with governments and obviously funders, but what would you say is the biggest misconception that either funders or governments have about scaling, deploying voice solutions? What would that be?
A couple. The first one is that you need internet to actually scale AI. That's one of the first misconception, that we need to educate donors and government. When we say AI without internet, it's like, how? Yeah. So that's one. So I'll keep educating here. It's possible. And the second one, I think it's confusing reach with engagement. And that's it's not really about the number of questions that we receive, right? It's what do people do with it, how they trust, and the type of behavior that we get from it. And that's what we call scaling. It's not really the just of there's so many questions that have been asked that must be at scale. That's we do differentiate this, and we believe it's a misconception.
Because I like that part about reach. It's not equal at engagement. And a lot of the times when we speak about impact, people are like, well, but you're reaching all of these people, millions of people. Yeah, but what are they doing with information? They are triggering. Are we actually hurting them by sending this information? Now you're sending it to millions of people. So that misconception it's quite clear. And actually, because I think it's interesting, you don't need AI. You don't need internet to actually deploy AI. Can you give us one example of how
Implemented today?
yeah, without
Well,
internet.
The two, like the HPV Lite that I was talking about, it's internet free. It's actually plugged on the government hotline. We have another one which is like a disaster relief, responsive relief, saying you can just call from a basic phone. You don't need a smartphone. Most of the time, we try to encourage the government and the donors to also absorb the cost of the airtime so that it's less a barrier to adoption. And then we've asked Viamo anything, essentially with plug to Gemini. We give access to Gemini to our users. So whether it's in Nigeria, in Tanzania, in Rwanda, or in Zambia at the moment, but it's growing, people are going to come and just ask questions. We had somebody in Nigeria like a few weeks back that asked 200 questions on how do I translate this sentence into Chinese so that they can actually learn the language. So, and then it can be about health. There is symptom that my child is having. Should I go and consult? Should I be worried? It can be about agricultural advisory. It can be about religion. It can be about, I'm struggling with my wife. Can you help? So, and this, no internet is required. And since we plug ourselves with our telco partners, key for us is to make sure that we can make it as much as possible free for the user or low cost.
Amazing, amazing. And obviously a lot of work goes into defining and designing those pieces. Last, and then we'll go to the audience. Olamide, you're quite a young fellow, and I'm sure there's very few things that keep you up at night, not like us kids and bills and all of that stuff. But if there's anything that keeps you up at night about voice AI, what would that be?
Yes, I really stay up at night. It's quite necessary for the level that I am. So there are a number of things that qualifies to worry me when it comes to voice AI. But two that stands out, or the two heaviest ones, is security and authenticity. So when we look at a list of coding bugs, um, stakeholders, meetings, presentations, all of those things, they have been solved. There's a blueprint for it. But when we try to localize artificial intelligence, when we say that we have to make models the African way, it means that we have to make the security the African way. We have to make the authenticity the African way. These are behavioral issues. And that means that when I build a system, I also have to worry about how people will interact with the system. I also have to worry about it's really a concern because there's a particular product that we're building, and when we were doing discovery and requirements gathering for the product, my team members asked that, "Oh, you want to do voice logging?" Because I pushed in front that we have to be unconventional. I want users to log in with their voice, and then people started asking questions. So what if somebody record my voice and go and use it to log in into my app? What if somebody clones my voice? So the question will come, but they are actually systems. They're actually frameworks. You design your solution. So you design your solution to be secure. So this particular solution I'm talking about, we made sure that even if you have a replicated voice, you have to also get a secret word. You have to also get a secret pattern that the person has already saved in the database that they used to log in. So yeah, we're also entering, like I've already mentioned, voice cloning. Yeah. So that is real. Authenticity. You can just wake up in the news and see Donald Trump speaking, and then it just comes tomorrow and debunk it that is not the one that said it. This is the era where we start to look for AI flags in the contents that we consume. So these things actually keep me up. They make me worry how we design our system. But because I know this, so I intentionally design systems that have been tested and have been proven to be able to move ahead of some of these concerns. Yeah, so that's it.
So that's what keeps you at night when you worry. What about excitement? Is there something that's like, oh man, I can get my hands on this?
Yeah, when my voice login worked, I was excited. Like, it worked. That's like my first time designing a voice-based authentication system, end-to-end registration, logging in and logging out. So when it worked, I was so excited. And then if I get to any AI voice intervention or any voice AI solution development, I'll tell them that don't worry, we'll do it. So that's excitement.
Yeah,
There.
amazing. All right, well, now it's your turn, guys. Any burning questions, any comments? Anything is welcome. We have one here, Pomina. Anyone else? 2, 3, perfect. Thank you so much. Pass the mic. This one. Jump.
Thank you so much for the discussion. This is really interesting to hear. My question is, I feel like all of the problems that we have with text-based language models and generative AI, in some ways, voice-based interactions extend the promise of it, but they also take all of the problems you have with that and turn it up 100 times. And so my question is, what challenges do you see, particularly with respect to implementation when it comes to voice-based interactions? And what are ways in which we could think about mitigating them?
Please, I want to ask like an example. Just give an example so that it's easy to answer.
One example that I would think of is putting guardrails around text-based interactions, right? There are a lot of different edge cases that you have to look at. And if you move to voice, there are so many more. I think Linda was saying you have to worry about like difference in education where where the vocal cord, the vocal register is. Like there's just so many different levels of things that you have to think about that it becomes infinitely harder to put guardrails around it. That's just one thing I can think of the top of my head. But I imagine token costs go up, latency goes up. It's just much more expensive to store all of your data, holding memory in context. Sorry, I'm a data scientist, so these are all of the things that come up first, but I imagine there are other implementation challenges as well. So just interested to hear what you've seen and how you're thinking about mitigation.
Thanks very much. I'm curious, AI, we know can continue to expand or reproduce some of the exclusive factors when power or literacy or gender dynamics aren't accounted for. So what are the early signs that you've seen in either your deployment data or your field research using HCD approaches and others that exclusion is actually happening to certain groups? And then what are some intentional design or delivery choices that you've made that are actually closing that gap?
Hi there, Revi Sterling. Carlos, I came here so I could stalk you. 'cause I know we're supposed to meet up. Also, love VMO, working on AVA, working with VMO AVA in Tanzania. It's going pretty well, learning a lot. I have a question. It feels like when I talk to people in the NGO space, they feel like it's a fait accompli, that like, oh, all these languages are going to be supported, all these languages, that's going to be just this automatic thing, this democratization of translation. And, I hear people talking, I just want to know the reality. Like, at my NGO, I'm hearing things like, oh, well, when we can do it, like, when are we going to move this into, Zarma or Quechua or Dine or Kikamba or something like this? And my take is we're probably a really long way away from these languages, and who would possibly fund that? And I hope we're actually really close to them and there's lots of funders, and you're going to tell me that I'm wrong on both counts.
Yes. My name is Nathaniel Fori from Farm Radio International. A quick question. I know that building these AI tools for end users is always nice and all that, but the backroom story is that it's quite expensive to power this, right? Because you can make the weights open, but the resources that is required to build this is always expensive. So I would like you to touch a little bit on that aspect, because it's a bit quiet in all this conversation. How do you power this? Because to power this, you need resources, and it goes with money. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Anne Moshiri. Mine is not necessarily a question. It's just to echo what she's saying. Because when it comes to voice, I do research with older persons. So it was great to hear that story for your grandma. So when it comes to intonation, when it comes to a frail voice today or tomorrow, your voice is different. When you're sick, you have a cold. So it would be interesting to see what your experiences are and to hear what how you're addressing those particular challenges. So voice here compounds the challenges, as she's saying.
It's a valid concern, and it's part of what I classify as authenticity. There is a particular question that most large language models still don't have correct answers to, which is like, I want to wash my car. I need to get my car to the car wash. It's 5 miles away. Should I walk or should I drive? That is still a challenge for text-based LLM. So we cannot expect voice-based to solve it, because we are actually still using the intelligence that we learned from text and bringing it into voice. So it's a very, very sincere concern, and it's to take us back to the drawing board, our system design, our architecture. When we look at our solution design, what are we solving against, what are we solving towards, that can help us design our system prompts, our guardrails. And yes, of course, I know that sometimes LLM use often they often go up against guardrails, and that is the reason why harness has been developed. So we have like harnesses that now guards agentic systems, and by the time you confine your intelligence around an agent, you harness it, and then you can be rest assured that before it goes out of that harness, it's already checked like several times that it is actually fitting into the purpose at which it is going. Yeah, so we still rely on the LLM intelligence, but we have to design our solutions with intentionality and make sure that we test it over several iterations.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of gender inclusion, I think we don't always know because not everyone's collecting data on who their users are. And so I think that's a big problem around being intentional. If you don't know who's using your tool, you don't know if you have women, or you don't know if you have lower income or higher income people using your tools. And I think there's a big I've seen a gap in the data and the back end data sometimes in the tools in terms of being able to track and trace who's using tools, who are your unique users, if the person using the tool is the same person, or if there's 5 different people using the same tool. And this is, goes way back to what we knew with mobile data and with social media metrics and things like that. So I think just an encouragement for folks to try to balance collecting those metrics, knowing who's using your tool with the privacy protections that we also want to have in place, so we're not collecting huge troves of very intimate, potentially sensitive conversations that we're not storing safely. I don't know. It's a huge question. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Maybe, Celine, if I can, just on the cost one, because yes, there's investments on the other side of the world that are going into the trillions, billions, right, to develop these models. And here we're trying to localize to have our own, but obviously as MPO, social enterprises, we are not seeing the same envelopes. How is Viamo navigating that to a certain extent? If you can speak a little bit about that.
I mean, it's expensive, like it's much cheaper to send SMS, for sure. Like in the design, you nailed it. All of the problem that you mentioned, that's what we experience. If we go with the cheap model, sometimes the latency is going to be worse. So we need to go back towards the expensive one. And one of the things that we do is really get closer to the telcos on the one hand, so that we can bring that airtime cost. And then we also get closer to the big tech. But the promise here is that we're going to get volume. But volume doesn't come overnight. If you want to make sure that you get quality, you need to take your time. So it's like the chicken and the eggs, right? Are you going to give me that price? Yes, but I need volume. No, but I need the price to be able to sell it. So it's not, I mean, I think it's the private sector that is going to be, the volume is going to bring the cost down eventually. But again, how many years before we can say like, this is really cheap? I can't predict the future.
Linda, yes, please go ahead.
A small last thing is, because it's so expensive, we need to be very sure that this thing needs an AI solution, because why are we pouring all our money into AI if we don't know if people are using it, if we don't know if it works, if we don't know if people have access? Like, I think we need to definitely take a step way, way, way back. And instead of going in with an AI first mentality, we need to be going in with a what is the problem we're trying to solve mentality, and what kinds of tools would actually solve it.
Like, AI is the new shiny rock, right? Everybody wants it, but I advise sometimes some of my customers, depending on the volume of data collection that they want to do, or the reach that they want to get, like it might actually be cheaper to go and deploy your people in the field, or to do like a good old school IVR, because it's just going to be cheaper. That's the way it is, and sometimes faster also to implement. So yeah, excellent point.
Great point to close. I know that our time is up. Sorry.
Yeah,
Go ahead, please.
address a question about open weight models and getting to use them. The question that was asked. So I think when you are building, because I would always encourage people to build, I would not say, yeah, you should be encouraged to build. So try to use APIs. There are some APIs that are freely available for a limited time for testing. So use APIs and validate your solution that yes, this truly needs AI. And then also, there are also GPU for rent. Like if you really want to use your own model or fine-tune models or train models, instead of worrying yourself about acquiring GPU, just rent a GPU, make sure your code is ready before you go ahead and pay for the rentage. Rent for 2 hours, 1 hour, validate that your solution works. Then you can be confident to approach people that can fund you.
Thank you so much to all of you for your questions. I think it was quite exciting to hear. And I think just to leave you with one thing, AI doesn't equate inclusion. And actually, AI badly designed can lead to the opposite. So let's be intentional and think about first, does this even need AI, right? We were having a conversation earlier around like some of the funders putting the AI first and then the problem after. And you kind of backtrack and you're like, wait, but I've solved the problem. Where's the AI in all of this? And I need AI to apply for this grant or to get it over the line. So thank you all for staying long. Thank you for your questions. We appreciate it. The speakers will be here if you want to ask more questions, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks so much.